La 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 la. La 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 ya la 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 ya die 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 die. La 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 la. Hello. Spring is here. Good to see you. Chag Sameach. Happy Tu B'Shvat. If you were outside and it's not overcast, you could see a full moon, or we're just past the full moon last because Tu B'Shvat was actually officially yesterday, but I feel like it's the Tu B'Shvat season. And that is the time in this midwinter full moon to celebrate, interestingly, the birthday and the new year of the trees. So it is super exciting to see so many people joining us for Tu B'Shvat, for this Seder. We're going to talk about what's the history of Tu B'Shvat, what it is, what's the Seder. We'll sing, we'll talk about Judaism and the environment, and some of our lore and legends about trees. And hopefully a good time will be had by all. So I'm going to still put some up on the screen, and let's see. I hope we can, yeah. For some reason, I usually can see everybody when I have the screen, and now I can't see everybody when I have the screen. All right, but can you see my screen? Somebody unmute and tell me.
Yes.
Great.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes,
great. All right, so
I can see you.
Okay. All right. So the song that I was singing, the melody is Olam Chesed Yibaneh, which we were singing on Shabbat morning. And I added it to our Tu B'Shvat Seder because we've had a very rough Shabbat and a rough weekend with the events that unfolded in my home state of Texas, with one of my colleagues and some of the congregants that were gathered, just Zooming a Shabbat service with a few people gathered, who led in someone who seemed like a homeless man who ended up being a terrorist who took them hostage. So thank God it ended with all of them escaping and being safe. But I know that it shook up so much of the Jewish world. And so I think the best, antidote to that is to be together, to come together. If we could come together in public, all the better, but to come together in any way or fashion is wonderful. And to remember that each of us is building the world that we want. When we make connections with people of other faiths and other religions and other races, we're building a more loving world for all of us. So I would like to sing this song with you and to set this, intention of making every corner of the world that we can more loving and more caring. Olam Chesed Yibaneh, la 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 la. Olam Chesed Yibaneh, la 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 la. Olam Chesed Yibaneh, la 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 la. Olam Chesed Yibaneh, la 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 la. I will build this world from love, la 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 la. And you must build this world from love, la 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 la. And if we build this world from love, la 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 la, then God will build this world from love, la 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 la. Olam Chesed Yibaneh, yada dai dai dai, yada dai dai. Olam Chesed Yibaneh, la 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 la. So it is, I think the Jewish response, to any attempt to prevent us from worshiping, from gathering, from pursuing our mission in the world has been to persist, to be resilient, to resist, to keep going, gather together and to hold our heads proudly and continue. So I'm so glad to see everybody here, remembering all of the goodness of our message to the world and all the things that we have to share. So to get ready for this Tu Bishvat Seder, we put something in the newsletter of things you could have if you want to make it super fun, the food that you can have and the drinks you can have. So you should have some kind of fruit that has like a shell or a peel. Could be, if you have an orange, a banana, nuts, right? Something that has a pit. Could be a date or an olive. And you could have a little platter. The Kabbalists would have 10 of each. They really got a lot of fruit. And then finally one that's like supposedly completely edible. It's okay to have a core or an apple or a little seed like a pear or a grape or a raisin. And that just reminds me that my dad, when he ate an apple, he ate the core and the seeds and everything. I don't know if anyone else's dad did that. And then some kind of a scent if you have something that smells good. And for the wine course or juice, whatever suits you, you can have some white wine and some red wine. And we're going to do some things that would definitely shock any wine connoisseur, but will make Kabbalists happy. Okay. So if you don't have those things, feel free to get them. And if you have a plant or flower around, add to the atmosphere of Tu Bishvat. Now, anybody, just if you have ever been to a Tu Bishvat Seder before, could you just wave at me or thumbs up or, show me a sticker or something? So great. A lot of people have been to Tu Bishvat Seders. Fabulous. No, some people have never been to one. So that's really exciting because it's your first one. And, growing up, I don't know, I grew up in Texas, so we planted trees on Tu Bishvat. We could plant a tree and it was usually February, maybe. This year it's a little early and can't do that everywhere. Tu Bishvat Seder, wow, that was an obscure custom, but it has been really revived. So again, back to my slides. I'll say a little bit about Tu Bishvat. Tu Bishvat is two Hebrew letters, Tet and Vav, that together add up to 15 because Hebrew letters are also numbers. We could explain that some other time. But Tu Bishvat is the 15th day of this Hebrew month of Shevat, the full moon of this winter month, usually maybe late January or February on a solar calendar. It's still cold for us, but if you were in Israel right now, or maybe in California, the almond buds are showing and spring is a little bit on the way, right? It's also called Rosh Hashanah La'ilan, the New Year of Trees, or the mystics called it the New Year of the Tree because they meant the mystical tree of life. So this is not a heavy duty holiday, like Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, Passover. It's a more light holiday. And at first it was just in the Mishnah and the early book of Jewish law as a tax day. You would tithe your fruit. Some people think it's the day the trees get a year older. Not exactly, but it's the beginning of tax season for your fruit because we would tithe the fruit to give to the needy. And when Jews were exiled from the land of Israel, it became a special day to remember the land of Israel by eating special fruits that remind us of the land of Israel. That in the picture is a little bit blurry, but it was a fruit feast that a friend of mine made once on Tu Bishvat, so it was so beautiful. I shared that. So with somebody, I'm going to ask Sarah, will you call on somebody because I'm having trouble seeing everybody, but can you call on somebody to, let's see if I can get somebody to read after I put this. I'm going to put this back up. And Sarah, are you there? I'm going to let you call on somebody to read.
Would you like to read?
Yeah.
Bonnie Brenner.
Okay. And they can unmute and read.
Bonnie, are you willing to read?
Why don't you call on someone who has their hand up? Okay.
Okay.
I can't see anybody.
I can read, but you're going to have to see my face because I have to pull it really close.
Okay.
The Kabbalist Tu Bishvat Seder. The most elaborate type of fruit feast is the Tu Bishvat Seder, started by the Kabbalists around the 17th century. The word Seder means order and usually refers to our special meal eaten on Passover to recall the Exodus from Egypt. Jewish mystics used a Haggadah of sorts called the, I'm going to mispronounce this, the Pri Etz Hadar,
Perfect.
fruit of the glorious tree, much which is taken from the Zohar, the great classic of Jewish mysticism. For the mystics, the type of fruit at the Seder allude to four worlds, four levels of divine creativity, from the most physical to the most spiritual. 4 cups of wine, each a bit redder than the last, trace the journey from winter to spring. By eating and drinking with proper intent, they hope to influence the flow of divine energy into the trees and their harvests. And then there's like a block, and I can't read.
Oh, okay, I'll read it. So it was a formerly obscure Kabbalistic custom, but thank you very much. That was beautiful. It was only practiced, in circles of mystics, but I don't know, a few decades ago, it just became more and more popular. Hence, so many of us have celebrated it, and that's what we're doing tonight. And then the last phase of Tu Bishvat is the more modern phase of Tu Bishvat. So maybe we can have somebody, Joel, Simon, would you read this about the modern Tu Bishvat?
Sure. Modern Zionism and the return to the land of Israel, Zionists made Tu B'Shvat a day for planting trees to reforest Israel, the only country in the world to have more trees at the close of the 20th century than at its inception. More recently in North America, Tu B'Shvat has become a day and season to focus on ecology and environmental activism. The Kabbalistic Seder has been revised to present an environmental message.
So Tu B'Shvat has gone from being this little holiday. Maybe you ate some dried fruit. Maybe if you, I know for the Yiddish group, you know about Bukser. Bukser is carob. People would eat dried carob or other dried fruits that came from Israel, like dates and so on, to remember the land of Israel. And now it's become such a big, important day because of our concern for the environment. So enough talking, how about some singing? We're singing with the Tree of Life. The Torah is our Tree of Life, and it's got some clapping. It's pretty easy song to do. That is sort of a translation of what we say when we put the Torah back in the ark. It is a tree of life to them that hold fast to it, and all its supporters are happy. You could repeat that. It is a tree of life to them that hold fast to it, and all its supporters are happy. Try it from the top. It is a tree of life to them that hold fast to it, and all its supporters are happy. It is a tree of life to them that hold fast to it, and all its supporters are happy. Shalom, 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 shalom. Shalom, shalom. Once more from the top. It is a tree of life to them that hold fast to it, and all its supporters are happy. It is a tree of life to them that hold fast to it, and all its supporters are happy. Shalom, shalom. Shalom, shalom. Shalom, shalom. Okay, well, now we're going to start with the ritual of the wine and of the special fruits that we have. But I'm going to take down the slides for a minute so we can see people better. There are different ways to set your screen, so you can see a split screen and you can see people as well as what's on the screen. I'm having a little trouble with that tonight, but if you're able to do that, that's really nice. So first cup of wine, just like the Passover Seder, there's 4 cups of wine or juice. And you have a white wine or white juice, if you can have white grape juice or apple juice or something, that represents winter. And right now we certainly are feeling winter, right? So if you've got it, you can hold it up. If you've got some kind of wine. And all white for winter. We'll say, Borei Pri Agafen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei peri hagafen. You can unmute and say amen. Amen.
Amen.
Okay. And now I invite you for the first kind of fruit the Kabbalists sow. This was very intentional. They would have first a fruit that has a, if you can see my little tray there, that has peel, something that's inedible that protects the fruit. It could be also nuts, right? So show us what you've got. And in fact, feel free at this point to unmute yourself and tell people what kind of fruit you brought or kind of nuts if you want. You can write in the chat. You can say it out loud if you want.
Here's Jackie.
Let's see what we've got.
Mixed nuts.
Okay, pistachios. Good, I got some of that.
Pistachio sounds good.
Yeah.
Pistachios.
In California, one of my friends had actually the president of the synagogue had a pistachio tree.
Oh,
Okay.
wow.
Walnuts.
Walnuts.
Avocado.
Yucca plant.
Okay. So
Peanuts in
the
it. Oh,
mystics, the Kabbalists would have like 10 fruits like this, okay, because that had mystical symbolism. Because we just sang about the tree of life, right? So what do you think is the tree of life when I say it's a tree of life? What is that? Anybody?
The Torah.
The Torah, right? We talk about the Torah and
Did you
or in
want
the Bible, wisdom as the tree of life.
You
And
did
that
it.
is because
Oh,
Torah
okay.
gives us life and trees give us life, right? But for the mystics, so I've got one thing to show you. For the mystics, there was another tree of life, which is the Kabbalistic tree of life, which was like a system of the divine flow from the highest of the high down into the world we live in. Okay, we don't have to go to the details of it, but they felt they were activating that tree of life and the life of all the fruits as they ate these fruits with special intention. So instead of just digging in, we'll say the blessing. If you did dig in, that's okay. We'll say a blessing for the fruit. And then as we eat it, we try to eat it with full intention, like to really think about the energy that went from the earth and the water and the sun to grow this fruit, and all the people, the hands that tended, the hands that picked it, that brought it to us. Maybe if you're really lucky from your own garden or trees. Let's say that prayer. I'll show it on the screen and I will say it. Okay, a moment. Okay. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu borei peri ha'etz. Praised are you, Adonai, our God, ruler of the world, who creates the fruit of the tree. So enjoy, but try, if you can, do it in a kind of, contemplative way, or just really tasting it. Interestingly, the blessing for a banana is borei peri ha'adama, the fruit that grows from the earth, because it's not like a regular permanent tree. It's a different kind of tree. So that's traditional. If you have a banana, you can say borei peri ha'adama. So enjoy those fruits. And as we're finishing those fruits, but please continue enjoying them, I've got another song. So this song is about the almond tree. And if you've been to Israel in the spring, you see these white buds coming and the almond tree begins to bud, and it's called a shkedia, because the word shaked means like, it's, Avram, what does shaked mean? It's very diligent. It's a tree that comes out first. It's the first one to come out. So I've got the lyrics here in English and in Hebrew of a children's song very popular in Israel for Tu Bishvat. And I'll do it in Hebrew. You can join in with Hebrew if you know it, and then in English will be easy. Hashkedia poachat v'shemesh pazorachat ציפורים מראש כל גג, מבשרות את בוא החג. ט"ו בשבט הגיע, חג האילנות. ט"ו בשבט הגיע, חג האילנות. In English, the almond tree is growing, a golden sun is glowing. Birds sing out in joyous glee from every roof and every tree. Tu Bishvat is here, hail the tree's new year. Tu Bishvat is here, hail the tree's new year. Okay. So we combine our enjoyment of the songs and the fruits and the wine with some Torah. And this is from the Torah where we talk about the many fruits of the land of Israel, the species for which the land of Israel is famed, the ones that we tend to eat on Tu B'Shvat so that we can remember the land of Israel. So seeing if would somebody like to read that one? I'll put it back up on the screen, and someone want to read it in English is fine. Read the English parts. Any volunteers? Okay, Leslie, you want to do that? I'm gonna show it again on the screen, right from the Torah, book of Deuteronomy, and you can read it.
Okay. For Adonai your God is bringing you into a good land, a land of streams and springs and fountains, issuing from plain and a video of the people covering the last word of that.
Oh, and hill,
a land of wheat and barley, of vines and figs, of pomegranates, a land of olives, trees and date honey, a land where you may eat food without stint, where you will lack nothing, a land whose rocks are iron and from whose hills you can mine copper. When you have eaten your fill, give thanks to Adonai your God for the good land which God has given you. Deuteronomy chapter 8.
Thank you. And that is the very verse from which we get the Birkat Hamazon, the blessing after meals, that when we eat and we're satisfied, we enjoy the shefa, the abundance of God's earth. We must give thanks. So we give thanks before and after. So here in the chat, I wondered, if it seems to me when I ask this question, almost everyone has had some special tree in their life that had a special role, like growing up, the tree they climbed, the tree they planted, right? And so I invite people to write in the chat, but maybe we can have three or four people, if you want, just tell briefly about a tree that has really played a big role in your life or does play a big role in your life. And we have some, if you want to tell anything about the tree, if it was, a particular tree, like was that a certain cherry tree or just cherry trees in general whenever you see them? Susan, why don't you tell us about it? Aronson.
When I was growing up, we had 2 cherry trees in our yard. One had sour cherries and one had sweeter cherries. And the one with the sour cherries was fun to climb, but the one with the sweeter cherries was harder to reach. And my aunt would make pies out of the cherries from that tree. So we would climb the tree and get the cherries for the pie.
That's a wonderful memory. That's great. And where was that, Susan?
Freehold, New Jersey.
Wonderful. That's so special. Pat, are you raising your hand about a tree? Yeah.
We had a maple tree out in the front yard where I grew up, and there weren't many housing developments around at the time. And it was just such a joy to climb up that tree like a monkey and find a little spot. And from that tree, I could see all the way into Philadelphia and see William Penn.
That's wonderful. That's really for a child to have that loftiness that comes from being in the tree. And I see a lot of people, we have some other ones, people are writing about their cherry trees, their papaya trees, the weeping willows, lilacs, the pine tree our son Noah planted in first grade, the Howard and Hallie in our yard is now 50 feet tall. Wow. And fond memories of the banana tree, a magnolia tree that grew after Dad died and bloomed on Father's Day. Wow. Thanks, Alan. And anybody else, maybe one or two other people want to tell about a tree that's meant a lot to you, a particular tree? if you want. You can just unmute and tell us. Anybody? It's kind of hard to do on Zoom, what can I tell you? But feel free to write down. I know growing up in Texas, in the hill country, we had a house out in Utopia, Texas, the ranch. And there was a tree there right by the Savannah River. It was a giant cypress tree, but it was alive, but it was kind of fallen halfway, partway, like leaning on this cliff. So you could look up the tree, and it was like my friend. I remember as I would go there, like confide in that tree. It was the tree that I told all the stories to. So I think for each of us, hopefully there's trees, and we could ask if our kids or grandkids or young people in our world can have a tree experience like we had. We have to make sure that the world offers that to them. Okay, so now we're going to go back to our slides here. And it's time for some more wine. Oh my goodness. So now you're going to take your white wine and add a drop of red wine, representing the beginning of spring. And so you've made a kind of a little bit of a rosé. All right, and we'll say the prayer, Borei Pri Hagafen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, Borei Pri Hagafen. And you can unmute for amen, please. Okay. So I hope this will remind us to be alert for those first signs of spring. They're going to be coming soon. I think just finding this little daffodil in the grocery store today, to me, that was a sign of spring, that soon they'll be actually blooming outside, right? And now, these were some palm trees that I saw in Ashdod, Israel. So I made a little montage there, or collage there. So now we get our next kind of fruit, which is a fruit with a pit. And I put the dates because dates are a good example. Why don't people show us what kind of fruit you have that has a pit, or had a pit? It doesn't have to have a pit right now. And you can write it in the chat, or you can tell us, if you unmute, tell us.
Dates.
We have dates.
Dates, great. If you have a date or an olive, then you have that's one of the special fruits of the land of Israel, right? And there's so much lore attached to these fruits, because the date represents, it says in the Bible, Tzadik katamar yifrach, the righteous will flourish like the date palm, and they will be fresh and blooming in their elder years. So that's what the date represents. And the olive tree, of course, the tree of peace. And it is a message of resilience too, like the Jewish people, because how do we get oil from the olive? We beat it, right? Or somebody does, and it creates olive oil. And that reminds us, though, that even through all the turmoil that Jews have suffered, we brought light into the world like the olive oil. So you might have an apricot or something. Any other, let's see what people have been writing in the chat. A martini olive, that is perfect. That's kind of maybe what we need now. Peach trees, an olive and a prune, apricots, olives, great. Mango. Yeah, I had mango. I couldn't tell if mango went with category 1 or 2, but I put it in category 2. So let's say Borei Pri Ha'etz. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, Borei Pri Ha'etz. V'te'avon, bon appetit. Again, really savor it. Eat with my mouth, talk with my mouth full. Try to really sense the energy in that fruit that you're eating. I'm scrolling through to see everybody eating. Great. God willing, next year we can do this together and have great big giant trays of fruit that we're all sharing, That will be wonderful. Everybody bringing different fruits in. Okay, enjoy that. Keep enjoying that. Yeah, you could have the Bishvat Seder with a meal. Some places are doing it, and if people can't come in person, they're sending catering the meals to them. I saw that in Baltimore with Pearl Pearlstone. Yeah, maybe some people know about that. So I'm going to continue with the lore of Tu B'Shvat. Okay. So here's another song about very much about the olive tree, right? I said something about the olive, that symbol of peace. Atze Zeitim Omdim, the olive trees are standing. It's kind of an American adaptation of the original Israeli song, which is acacia trees are standing. It's a line out of the Torah about the construction of the holy sanctuary, but it doesn't translate well into English because that would be Atze Shitim Omdim, and it just would make the kids at summer camp laugh too much. So we change it to Atze Zeitim Omdim. The olive trees are standing. And here I want to try a little experiment with unmuting. At least if a few people will unmute, and you will just chant over and over again. Atze Zeitim Omdim. I'll put it in the chat too, because I don't want to have the screen right now, but the slide Atze Zeitim Omdim, which is olive trees are standing. So you just chant it over and over. Atze Zeitim Omdim, kind of softly.
Zeitim Omdim.
Keep going. Don't stop. You keep doing it, and I'll do a little melody.
Zeitim Omdim.
Now softer and softer. I think that worked pretty well for Zoom, right? I think we should give ourselves some, a little round of applause or a little applause sticker. Okay. Okay. So very good. And yes, thanks. Muting. Okay, great. And now we continue in our journey through the Seder. Let's see. So a wonderful story. Okay, so well, maybe Susan Towers, I saw you were there. Do you want to read this for us? The legend of Honi, the circle maker. This is a legend from the Talmud.
Let me move the
Can you see it?
pieces are in my way. Okay. From a legend. Okay. Do you want me to read that? Okay.
Yeah.
One day, Honi was journeying on the road and he saw a man planting a carob tree. He asked him, "How long does it take for the tree to bear fruit?" The man replied, 70 years. Honi then asked, "Are you certain that you will live another 70 years? The man replied, "I found carob trees in the world as my ancestors planted these for me, so I too plant these for my children."
Beautiful. So that's one of the most favorite stories for Tu B'Shvat, about Honi, the circle maker. I told it to the Hebrew school kids with an illustrated book. Honi's kind of like the ancient Israeli Johnny Appleseed, but he was Johnny Carob Seed. He went around planting carobs, and he became kind of like Rip Van Winkle. He goes to sleep for 70 years and so on. But the question is, it's a sweet story, but what are we doing to plant a world for the next generations, whether it's our own offspring and grandkids, or the generations to come, are all of our offspring. So I'd like to invite people to consider for a moment, what are you doing to be like Honi the Magel, Honi, the one who planted those trees that took 70 years, that he would never see the fruit. That was kind of because the legend, he did go to sleep and he did get to see the fruit, but when he woke up after 70 years. Okay, but most of us don't get to do that. So what kind of things are you doing to plant seeds like for a better world that will come to fruition, God willing, in the future? Please write some of those in the chat. And maybe a couple of people would care to share that out loud, like thinking of the things that you're doing, whether it's for the environment or any other cause. And okay, I see Leslie and Stan there. You want to say something? Go ahead.
It's Alan.
It's Alan.
Alan, sorry. You know,
So-
it's Slan. I can't. I also need my
Really?
glasses.
That's all right.
I couldn't rename it today.
Okay.
So I think as most people on this Zoom know, we have a very vibrant multi-faith effort, and that permeates our community actually.
Mhm.
And we have made a huge effort to involve the young people of the various faith houses in that effort, in the hopes that they will carry forward some of the ideals and the things that we're attempting to accomplish.
Wonderful. That, I think that's very important. And I think you will see some of that in your lifetime. That's something that you'll see the beginnings of that, but we can't even predict how far that will go into the future and how those young people will be impacted and the next generation from them. And we have people that are doing things for the environment, growing food, buying trees in Israel, supporting the Nature Conservancy, other environmental groups. Anybody else want to share something that you are doing? Carol.
For the last 4.5 years, I've been involved in a sisters group, and it's 2 Jewish people, 2 Muslim women, and 2 Christian women, and some of the people who are here in this room tonight are also part of a sister group. And since we began, we now have 4 sisters groups, and it's and we're sharing and becoming friends and learning about each other, and we are working really hard on sharing the fact that we're all one and that we all need to work together.
Wonderful.
So starting from 6 women, we now have 24.
That you're planting seeds for the future. You're doing something right now. You could feel the benefits now, but I think it will go from generation to generation. And I think that really should give us comfort with the events that happened this weekend, that even though there was an act of terrorism there, but there were also Muslims and Christians, clergy and rabbis, clergy of all faiths, and people coming together to comfort the community because of all the activism that Rabbi Charlie has done for multi-faith and interfaith work. So that can't be stressed too much. Very important. Okay, anybody else? Something that you're planting in this world to make it better for future generations? If you can. Okay. If you haven't thought of something, I'd encourage you to think of something. What is it that you're doing to plant? And especially this time of year, what is it you're doing to plant something to make our environment better for generations to come? So we'll be a healthy world for generations to come. Okay, so back to our story. Okay. This is one of my favorite songs. And this is one of my favorite pictures, actually. I call that picture Mayim Shamayim, because Mayim is water, Shamayim is sky, and you could basically turn the picture upside down. It would be almost the same. Okay, so this is a song that came from a world gathering, a peace gathering of people of different faiths and cultures. And the song can be sung in many languages, but I have it here in English, Hebrew and English. So I'll start the melody. I encourage you, if you want to sing it with me, sing the Hebrew if you can. Adama, land, Shamayim, sky. And then we'll do it in English. The English words are there too. Okay. La la la, la 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 la. La la la, la 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 la. La 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 la, la 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 la, la 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 la. La 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 la. La 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 la. Ya da 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 da. Ya da 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 da. Words in Hebrew. Adama veshamayim, chom ha'esh, tzlil hamayim. Ani margish zot begufi, Beruchi ben nishmati, heya 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 ho, heya 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 ho, heya 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 ho. In English, love the earth, love the sky, heat of fire, drop of water. I can feel it in my body, in my spirit, in my soul. Hey ya, 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 ho. Hey ya, 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 ho. Hey ya, 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 ho. La 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 ya la la. Okay. Okay, so time for some more wine, I think. So by now you can have half red or half white, or what I did, I cheated a little and I have my rosé ready because this represents spring really being in progress, when you really start to see the buds and you really see the leaves coming out and you're celebrating it is really spring. So get your kind of pink wine out or juice out, or whatever beverage you prefer, and we can say Borei Pri Hagafen again. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam Borei Pri Hagafen. Thank you for that. And finally, now this last kind of fruit that we eat is fruits that are wholly edible. Okay. I'll explain. Yeah, I didn't really explain why the different kinds of fruits. So I'm going to actually do that. I guess there's so many parts to this Seder. So the fruit that has the outside shell, right, that you can't eat, to the Kabbalists, that represents the physical world. They talked about 4 worlds: physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual, that we live in. Right? And that this tree of life flows into. So the fruits that have the hard outside shell represent our physical world. But my teacher, Rabbi Zalman Chachter Shlomi, said that there's kind of an emotional, psychological meaning to that, because they also represent our defenses. When we have like a hard shell around us, that's to protect us. And we might feel right now like putting up a hard shell like that. But somehow inside of that is something sweet and something that can be enjoyed, right? The next level of the fruit, the ones that had the pit inside of them, represent the emotional world. So that's Asiya in Hebrew, Asiya Yitzira. For the Kabbalists, they represent the emotional world. And to Reb Zalman in his teaching, the pit represents that there are relationships that we do share more, our friends, right? Our fellow congregants. But maybe there's a pit inside. There's something hard inside that we are not ready to share. Okay, we have to defend some things on the inside. So now when we get to this world of the fruit that is completely edible, that's called the world of Bria, the world of thought and the intellect. And it's fully edible. So Reb Zalman says it represents our most intimate relationships, where we can share fully. We don't have to have defenses, and we can really feel, we can really communicate, right? And we need all those different worlds and different fruits. So now if you'd like to show us what fruit you have that is completely edible, feel free to write it in the chat or show us or tell us what you got. Grapes, apples.
Grapes.
Great. Anyone on Team Raisin?
Raisins.
Cranberries, okay. Okay, so interestingly, the cranberries, right? Do they grow in Delaware? The cranberries? Growing in more of a bog, and the grapes, of course, grapes, although they grow on a vine, it's called, we still say the prayer for Borei Pri Ha'etz. Okay. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam Borei Pri Ha'etz.
We're stuck with this now.
That's all right. We'll eat some raisins.
Okay, if you have a blueberry or some kind of thing that grows on the ground, we'll say Borei Pri Ha'adama, Ha'adama, the fruit of the earth.
Oh. Wonderful.
And we can sense again the energy of the sun, the energy of the roots, the soil. and all of that beautiful life force that comes to us through eating the fruits. When we lived in California, my husband planted most of those 7 species from Israel in our yard. We did have the pomegranates, a grapevine, figs, dates, and olive trees. We did not have wheat and barley. So that was pretty exciting. Okay, let's see what else people wrote in the chat. We got blueberries. Yeah, the prune. Well, the prunes, I'm putting them in the category with the things that have a pit, although yours might be pitted. But originally, but that's okay. It's not like, precise. Okay. So enjoy those fruits as we're enjoying them. I'm going to see what's next in our Seder. When I directed, okay, wait, let me see who said this. Leslie, when I directed preschool, we planted a biblical garden that included the 7 species. Wow, where was that, Leslie? Where did you get to plant all 7 species?
In Potomac, Maryland.
How fantastic. That is great. Okay. So, maybe, something to think about for the gardening. Is there a gardening committee? I bet there is. All right. So let's see where we're going now on our journey through the 4 worlds. The Shemitah, the sabbatical year. So we are right now in the sabbatical year. That is the biblical sabbatical year, because the Bible tells us that once every 7 years, the land must rest and lie fallow. That's basically observed in Israel. So let's see. Carol, would you read this? Would you be willing to read this? First, a quote from the Bible, and then something about the Shemitah year.
The Shemitah sabbatical year. 6 years you shall sow your land and gather in its yield. But in the 7th year you shall let it rest and lie fallow. Let the needy among your people eat of it, and what they leave let the wild beasts eat of it. You shall do the same with your vineyards and olive groves. Every 7th year in ancient times, the land was allowed to lie fallow, and debts were forgiven. This is the biblical Shemitah sabbatical year. After 7 times 7, the 50th or Jubilee year went even further, returning people to ancestral lands and freeing many slaves. There's a black box on the next.
Oh, I don't know why some people are saying that, but sorry, I can see it all.
Hebrew year is
It's a Shemitah year. Okay, so well, anyway, we're in the Shemitah year, and although the Shemitah year was I don't know if I spelled Jubilee right, so you can correct me if I'm wrong. But we don't know when the Jubilee year is anymore, but we do know when the Shemitah year is. It's been observed ever since biblical times, and there's all kind of technicalities to kind of get around it, because how can you feed all the people in Israel without planting, without sowing and harvesting in modern times? But many environmentalists are rethinking the Shemitah, because it seems to have one of the most powerful, it does have one of the most powerful messages in the Torah, that the land needs to be cared for, it needs rest, it needs to be respected, and that along with that, it's a time of freedom for people. It's a time for people would get their ancestral lands back, slaves would, and the Jubilee year, people would be freed. And so it shows that social justice, I think it's beautiful that it came along this year with Martin Luther King Day, because it shows that social justice and environmental justice have belonged together since the days of the Bible. So I have a little video from camp, Eden Village Camp. I don't know if anybody went to that camp or their kids went there, but they're singing about the Shemitah year. I hope you enjoy it. It's like a 3-minute video, and they sing about the year, and they mentioned the word shefa, which is the abundance that we should all be able to enjoy together in the Shemitah or any year. Okay, so let's go. So for a moment, I'm going to stop sharing that because it's a wonderful topic to explore. Yes, it's such a lovely, it's a great summer camp. I hope my grandkids will go. Some of them would go there someday. So if you want to look up Shemitah Project, I actually had on the PowerPoint, I had just a moment. I want to give you the link that you can look this up if you would like to learn more about Shemitah. Hold on. Just a moment. Talk amongst yourselves. I'm trying to give you this. ShemitahProject.org. Well, I just am going to have to write the words there. You'll have to look it up. ShemitahProject.org. Okay. So look that up and you can learn a lot more about Shemitah. I don't know if anybody, can raise your hand or put a sticker on there if you do know about Shemitah and if you're doing anything for Shemitah or learning about it. Sarah, what about you? What are you learning about Shemitah?
Well, I knew of it. It's so interesting to know that it's still practiced in Israel.
Yeah.
Is it everybody? Is it like a rule or a law or anything? Is it voluntary?
Well, it's not. It's it's not a law. I guess what's happened is like on Passover, you're really supposed to get rid of all of your leaven, but we have a way around it, right? We sell the leaven to someone who isn't Jewish. Well, actually, they have stuff like that. Like they sell the land symbolically to a Druze gentleman. They do other things like these very Orthodox people who really want to keep this, or people that are trying to keep it, will sometimes eat food that's grown like off the ground, or it's grown in a greenhouse, or it's grown by parts of Israel that weren't part of biblical Israel, or by people who aren't Jewish. So there's all kinds of technicalities. And in the letter of the law, it seems to be losing the spirit of Shemitah, right? Like the kids were saying, which is the land doesn't belong to me. Let it be a time of rest to, that you share with the animals, you share with the people, there's greater equality. How can we do that in a modern society where there's millions and billions of people to feed is another question, but it's really a fascinating one. And I think if you go to that website, look it up, it's with Hazon and other organizations, and you can explore more about that. Okay, so are you ready for the last cup of wine? Yes, it does last a full year. It lasts a full year. Beginning the Jewish year. Okay, so you should now you should have all red wine. Okay, so get some red wine or red grape juice if you've got some. Show me your juice. And we'll do one more. Somebody else want to lead the Borei Pri Hagafen? Oh gosh, can you guys see the full moon out the window? That's great. Okay. Phyllis, would you like to lead Borei Pri Hagafen? Amen. L'chaim. Let's all do a big l'chaim. Unmute and say l'chaim. How's that?
L'chaim.
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 I am Jeffrey.
I am.
What do I need to drink? That's nothing but sugar, honey.
L'chaim is a very powerful thing, and sometime I'll tell a story about l'chaim. So it's very important to do a big l'chaim. So now for the fourth kind of fruit, we don't actually eat fruit because this is the spiritual world. The world is called Atzilut to the Kabbalists. So we have a scent, because a scent, reach, is associated with a spirit, ruach, right? And so I'd love to know what kind of scents people brought. If you can tell me if you brought an essential oil or a flower or a perfume or fragrant fruit, you could write that in, or you could just tell us right now. You can unmute and tell us what you've got.
And stick.
Cinnamon, lovely. Spices, bergamot. Ooh.
Candle.
Oh, great. Scented candles. I'd love to be smelling some of those. This is going to be fun to share. So this one, who else? Anyone else sharing what you got?
I said it.
I have the, this is the scent, the spices that were in the temple incense in the ancient temple, not the very ones, but somebody made it in Israel. So we use that for Havdalah. And let's see, I got another listing there. We've got some black raspberry vanilla sounds great. Okay, so now I'll put up the blessings that we say for scents. Hold on. Okay. Okay. Oop. Okay. So if it's trees and flowering bushes that have a hard stalk, you say atzei bisamim. If it's herbs or soft shrub, isbei bisamim. Or if you're not sure what, or it's just spices, perfumes, or something like that, you say borei minei bisamim, just like you do at Havdalah. So let's do that one. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei minei bisamim. And now, enjoy the scent. Enjoy that beautiful scent. So this represents, really, I could say, very intimate, the spiritual relationships, you know, where really, like our relationship with God and our soul and the spiritual relationships we share with people. So as you smell that, you know, more than just smelling it, feel it nurturing your soul. With our nishima, our breath, connects us to nishama, our soul. And the reach, the scent, connects us to ruach, the spirit.
It's the real deal.
That. Enjoy that.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. All right. So I hope you enjoyed your scents. I couldn't see everybody smelling them, but I hope they're good. Let's see, a couple more things in the chat. Italian seasoning, that sounds tasty. Cloves, good. Okay. So as we're getting, now we've done all the kinds of fruits and all the kinds of wine. We've gone through these different worlds and different relationships. Cumin, well, we love cumin at my house because my husband's Moroccan and cumin goes in a lot of stuff. Okay. So as we're coming toward the end of this Tu Bishvat Seder, well, before I do anything else, I wanted to give you time to share, like, just what are your, you know, as we do the Seder, what does it mean to you to celebrate Tu Bishvat? What is it, or a Shemitah year? You know, what's the value of doing something like this today? And why is it important? And I invite anybody who wants to unmute and just share your thoughts, or if you don't want to share them out loud, you can write them in the chat.
Not really good.
I'm trying to think about it.
Well, it's the
and yeah, you might want to mute unless you're sharing with everybody. Okay.
It's the connection
Spring is coming.
Environmentalism. That's what it really is.
Okay.
So just tell them.
Wait,
Yes,
Jennifer and Sarah, you know you're not muted, so why don't you go ahead and tell us what you got, what you want to share?
We were just saying that it was a connection with nature and with the environment. And you know, in a way, and that leads to the connection with each other. I think, and
I think that's part of this message of the Shemitah and the Torah, that, you know, and what I said about, you know, the fruits representing relationships, that by drawing closer to the earth, we can get closer as humans. Relationship to the earth, renewal, longevity, energies of nature, connecting to that. Carol, what do you?
I'm reading a book about the Dust Bowl right now. And when you were talking about, you know, the Shemitah and taking care of the earth and letting it rest, I just have all these pictures of what they did to the earth by not taking care of it, that they lost it. And the importance of letting the earth rest, letting us rest. I mean, we have to rest.
Very important.
Shabbat.
Very important. And in fact, you know, our prayer book, I love our prayer book. It did edit the prayers, as I'm sure you know, because it's from the Reform movement. But they have the Shema, but they took out the second paragraph of the Shema. The Shema really has 3 paragraphs after you say that first line, right? And the second paragraph is about this message that if you don't give the land rest, you're going to be exiled from the land. Now, maybe they took it out because it seemed like kind of mechanistic, if you're bad, you'll be punished. But really, it seems today that it had an environmental message that if we didn't live in accordance with the rhythms of nature and, see the land, being stewards of the land, that we're not going to last long on that land. So, and that's very real. That our ancestor, Avraham Avinu, came from Mesopotamia, a land people. There were lands that were exploited so much that they really couldn't give anymore. And so people had to migrate. Yeah. So we've got, it's okay to rest. We're stewards of the earth. And of course, in our modern world, we're living in an age of environmental destruction of species, not just, the climate change, but climate weather disasters, and as Rabbi Waskow calls it, global scorching. So this is an imperative, but I've always felt that if we just try to scare people into doing the right thing, it's going to work for some people, but the best way to do it is out of love, that we can develop a love and cherishing of our environment. So, and I think that Tu B'Shvat is one of the ways to do that. Nina, what do you want to share?
So yesterday, I actually participated in a Tu B'Shvat Seder led by a Jewish couple in India.
Wow.
And it was really fascinating what their traditions are. But part of their tradition is that Tu B'Shvat is a day of thanksgiving, to be grateful for what we have and what we can do. It's connected to a shipwreck, and they were the model is that they were saved, that 7 men and 7 women were saved by Eliyahu Hanavi. But it's developed into a festival of Thanksgiving besides the festival of the trees and the fruits and the environment.
Right, I didn't
which
know
I thought was interesting.
Very nice. Wonderful that you got to do that. It has been observed by Jews around the world. I know my in-laws from Morocco, they were eating all those special fruits for Tu B'Shvat, and just each country had its own special observances. So that's really cool. Thank you. Okay, well, did anyone else want to share any thoughts about Tu B'Shvat? Larry.
I just sometimes wonder as we drive back and forth between Maryland, Rockville and Seaside and Lewis, as you go past the fields in both states, and sometimes one field will be full of corn or another crop and one next to it will be empty during the summer, whether the farmers are in effect doing Shemitah, whether they're resting that field that year before planting it again the next year. And I wonder about that as we drive back and forth. So this is very apropos.
That's and some people are trying to do the Shemitah in a modern way if they can't, like I think some Jewish retreat centers, farms, summer camps, if they at least are rotating the crops like that so that some land can enjoy Shemitah at different times. So we have some hands raised. So Gabrielle, do you want to share something?
I just wanted to add another book to what Carol had offered, hers on the Dust Bowl, but David Silverman's book, This Land is Their Land, speaks to our American indigenous and how we as when it became colonized America, the destruction of that land, the one that we're living on right now, began. So I recommend that. David Silverman, this is their land.
Wonderful, thank you. Thank you. I'd like to see that, read that, and I think we're with a lot of the issues that come up like wildfires, people are seeing that our Native Americans had a lot of wisdom to teach us about that has been ignored, and maybe some people are starting to listen to it again. Okay, and Leslie, and okay, did you have your hand up, or was that from before? Okay, all right, you still have your hand up, you could take it. Okay, so well, for the end of the Tu B'Shvat Seder, I have a meditation that came from an experience that I actually had myself. When I first when I was in my rabbinic studies with Aleph, we used to go to a retreat center in upstate New York, near Woodstock, New York, kind of also spiritually near Woodstock, New York, but physically near Woodstock, New York. It's called Elat Chaim, and it's not operating anymore independently, but I went there for like not 7 whole summers, but over 7 summers. And once, when I was really getting into it, I was just felt so connected to the land, the earth, the trees, the gardens, that one day, oh, thank you very much, that I decided, well, it's time to hug a tree. There was a giant pine tree. I think it was a white pine. It was massive. And when I hugged it, I touched it, I looked up, toward the sky, I felt the roots beneath my feet, and it seemed like I was connecting not only to that physical tree and all the life that it held and shared, but also to that tree of life, that the divine energy in the world, right? The cosmic tree of life, which is not just a mystical idea, but there's literal physical ideas of the tree of life that we are all part of. So I have a meditation that I'm going to do, and I invite you, I'm going to show you on the screen of the picture that I took of a friend hugging a tree. But if you'd like, that was hugging this great big oak tree, I think, next to the Hudson River. And I'll invite you, if you'd like, you can read this, but if you like to really experience it, I'd invite you to, if you like, close your eyes or just soft focus your eyes, or look at that picture of that tree kind of with a soft focus, and just place yourself in a garden or in a forest or an orchard, hugging a tree, and let your imagination go as I say the words. Really feel it in your senses. Could be fun. And if you're not into that kind of thing, you can just read the words if you want. So first I'll invite you to, as you're seated, if you're seated, to feel your feet kind of rooted in the floor like a tree has roots, and to feel your spine upright like a trunk of a tree. And as you breathe in, you can kind of feel the breath going up that trunk towards the sky. And as you breathe out, it's coming down like the sunshine comes down through the tree and into the roots. Just doing that a couple of times to get situated. So I'd like to invite you to be a bit playful in your imagination. Inside, imagine that you are hugging a great tree. What tree is it? What kind of a tree are you hugging? Could it be a maple or an oak or some kind of a pine or evergreen tree? I'll invite you to engage your senses, feeling the textured bark of the tree. What does it feel like? What's the texture of it? What is the smell? Do you smell smells of the earth? Or if it's an evergreen, do you smell a piney scent? What's in the air around you? Now, with your inner eye, see the branches of the tree rustling in a summer breeze or a spring breeze. And begin with your inner eye to observe how the immense trunk and mighty branches of this tree you've chosen are alive, how they host myriad living creatures. Maybe there's busy ants crawling up the tree, squirrels in the branches, melodic birds that are landing atop the tree. How much life is supported in this one tree? How much oxygen is this tree giving to you and to our world? Inwardly, as you hold this tree in your heart and your imagination, sense how unseen currents of vitality keep this tree alive and growing. The sap that goes in the tree, the sun's rays that come to the tree, the roots that go into the ground and communicate through the fungi with the other trees. And sense as you breathe in and out that you and this tree are exchanging the very breath of life. And now you might even crane your neck back a little if that's comfortable, but just looking up with your inner eye, see the branches and the twigs soaring ever higher in immense loftiness. They appear to blend into the very light of the sky. You can sense a cool breeze making those branches sway as those leaves rustle or the pine needles quiver and dance with the sunlight and seem to melt into its radiance or meld into its radiance. Higher and higher, let your imagination ascend on the Jacob's ladder branches of this great tree. Let your soul feel free to follow every twist and turn of its boughs, soaring endlessly into the dancing light aliveness above you. And at the same time as you ascend with your imagination, imagine your bare feet grounding into the soft earth, mingling with the tree's great roots, and sense those roots flowing powerfully into secret, hidden places of the sacred, nourishing earth, connecting with all the other trees of the forest. And feel your own roots deepen, so to speak, as you hug this living tree. Imagine that this tree is the living tree of Torah, wisdom, and consciousness. It has no end. This tree is always here for you. You can find it in nature, in Torah, in your very soul. The Torah and the Midrash tell us a person is like a tree. So as you go into the world in the coming days and as the season warms into spring, I invite you to maybe hug a tree or look at a tree differently. Sense it. Take a moment to appreciate it with your senses and with your soul. Okay. So if you were into your reverie, if your eyes were closed, you might want to open, I would suggest you open them now because I have something to share with you. And look about you, situate yourself in the room. I hope that was a good time looking at that tree. And the last thing I want to share is so a video that I made about that takes you into the beginning of spring. So that picture there with all those different colors is autumn in New York State at Rockefeller State Park Preserve. And I'm just going to share for the last thing tonight is a video that I made of the song with this theme of the Song of Songs, you know, that it's a book of the Bible that's about the love poetry of ourselves and the land and God, and it's beautiful, and hope it'll remind us that spring is just around the corner. See, I've got, yes, trees do communicate with each other. There's a book about that, right? The Overstory. Do anyone have that book? Yeah, and scientists are writing about that, how they communicate via the fungi network and all of the giving tree. Yeah. Okay, so ready? I'm going to share this little video a video slideshow that I made. Okay. Here you go. These are my own photos. I took all these photos. So you can unmute now. The formal part of our Seder is complete with that. Thank you, thank you.
Thank you, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. When I see that, then I feel like spring is coming. It's with the seasons. Thank you so much for coming, for so many people for coming out for this. And I hope it brightened our spirits. Beautiful. The Hidden Life of Trees. Yeah, we can, you know, if you want to people save the chat, then you'll have the names of all of these books and websites and so on. Thank you. Thank you guys for coming, and
Thank you for a beautiful
Thank
service.
you.
It was lovely. Thank you.
it's hard to do it on Zoom, but you know, thanks.
Good night,
Okay,
everyone.
It's coming in right now. Okay. All right. Thanks. Thank you.
Good night.
Thank
night.
you.
Bye.
Hi.
Good night, everyone.
Oh, thanks.
Good night. Happy
Thank you.
Tuesday.
Thanks. Okay, I'm gonna stop the recording. Okay.